Welcome to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. Today is Wednesday, the 9th of April, 2025. I'm Craig Resnik-Hanson, and today I'm joined by Brighton fan and author of the book, The Price of Football, Kieran Maguire. We talk stadiums, success, the spiralling cost of being a football fan, and so much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our chat with the one and only Kieran Maguire. Hi, Kieran. How are you doing?
I'm as good as I can be as a Brighton fan who's just seen my team lose to nine-man Crystal Palace.
That is tough. This is actually the wrong time to get you after the weekend, isn't it? After the Derby defeat. But I just got you fresh off of 5 Live speaking to Nicky Campbell. What was Nicky asking you about?
It was about the fact that for the last 2 seasons, the 3 clubs who have been promoted from the Championship have been relegated. Now, we're working on the basis that both Ipswich and Leicester will get relegated, of which there's a 99% chance, unless the Premier League Commission decides to give Manchester City a 40-point or more deduction for alleged misdemeanours. But that's we don't know the outcome of that one as yet.
Before we get into the Brighton stuff, that is something that everyone's been thinking about. I think this 2 years on the bounce, all 3 relegated teams going down. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of 2 factors. First of all, the rewards for surviving in the Premier League are so great that those clubs that have managed to do it in recent years, and here I think we're looking at perhaps what we might refer to as the new middle class of the Premier League, the likes of, as much as it pains me to say, Crystal Palace, Brentford, Brighton, and so on. Clubs who you would probably expect to be involved in a relegation fight 4 or 5 years ago. They're now sort of occupying on pretty much those sort of 9th to 12th positions, which means that if you are a promoted club, instead of perhaps saying at the start of the season, there's 3 of us going down, there's probably 6 or 7 clubs in with a chance of relegation. That 3 clubs going down is probably now down to a choice of 3 from 4 or 3 from 5. And the clubs that have been promoted, if we look at 2 of the clubs last year in Sheffield United and Luton, I think it's fair to say that they gave it no more than an air shot. Luton spent £28 million in the Premier League. That's not going to get you very far. Sheffield United spent a wee bit more than that. So the 3 sides that were relegated in 23-24 budgeted to get relegated. The 3 clubs that have been promoted in this season, who are currently occupying those 3 places, Southampton have spent the least. Leicester and Ipswich, I think, initially thought that the style of football, which and I'm not a football expert, by the way, the style of football which helped them to achieve promotion in 23-24 could be transferred to the Premier League. Premier League is an unforgiving mistress when it comes to making mistakes. So therefore, what you have to do, you have to be pragmatic. You have to try to grind out results, and playing tippy-tap football amongst your back 4 when you've got predatorial opponents is a license to get relegated, and that's what we've seen.
Well, on the other hand, Brighton, as you mentioned, have been a part of this sort of emerging middle class now for a little while. What is it that your club did differently that enabled them to avoid this trapdoor and actually season on season sort of convert themselves into now sort of emerging Conference League candidates?
In my view, that they had a strategy, and their strategy was if you're realistic, if you get promoted to the Premier League, you can probably afford 5 players who are of a higher caliber than your Championship players, and you're hoping that you might have some of your Championship players will be able to play at that higher level. So that's what Brighton did, and they spent 2 seasons, if I'm honest, not exciting us as fans very much, but we were along for the ride. The whole point was, start of the season, the ambition was to finish 17th or better, and nothing more. So they played a practical style of football. It wasn't great to watch at times, many times, but a victory is a victory. Remaining in the Premier League was seen as an achievement. And then they decided to go for a gear change. Tony Bloom, who is the owner, who is incredibly visionary, had a strategy. Once we feel that we've got enough players of Premier League calibre, we will change the style of football. And they did that by bringing in Graham Potter as a change as far as being a coach was concerned. And you started to see the improvements. It took Graham a couple of years before that started to manifest itself. But certainly the style of football became more expansive, became more Premier League style. But by that stage, they probably had 15 to 20 people in the squad who could deliver and replicate exactly what the coach wanted. And so I've just been on a show with Nicky Campbell, and somebody said that football's not football anymore. Football's like watching a game of chess. And it is incredibly tactical and incredibly coordinated to a certain extent. It's like a dance moves that you're watching, in terms of every player knows every time a pass is paid exactly where they're supposed to be on the pitch. But you need to have players with sort of emotional intelligence as well as the physical capabilities and the tactical and technical knowledge to be able to apply that. So that was the Brighton style, and that they are, despite 3 defeats in a week, they're still 8th in the Premier League. And there's still a chance of European football this season.
From the outside, from a cursory glance, it looks like Tony Bloom's done, obviously, an unbelievable job at the club. But tell me, just how popular is he with the fans themselves? Because sometimes it's not always how it seems from the outside. There could be niggling issues among the fan base, or is he universally loved?
Tony Bloom walks on water. It's as simple as that. Every Brighton fan knows that when things were looking really grim, when Brighton were playing in an athletics track, and then they managed to get planning permission to move to the Amex Stadium, I did the sums, and I said, well, if they go to the banks and borrow money, it just doesn't add up. What we didn't realise, that Tony had been effectively secretly funding the club for a year or two by then. He then put £500 million of his own money, interest-free, into Brighton Hove Albion to build the stadium, to build training facilities, which are up there with the best clubs, not just in the Premier League, but the best clubs in Europe, and also to fund investment. Tony Bloom, if you go to an away match, on occasions you will see him on the train on the way back after a match eating his sandwiches, just like a regular fan, because Tony sees himself as a regular fan. So he's got huge kudos, huge credibility with the Brighton fan base. Are there some nitwits out there who say, oh yeah, but I want an even richer person? Yeah, there are, but there's nitwits in every aspect of life, and they are ridiculed by 99% of Brighton fans. So yeah, Tony is held in complete awe by the fan base. I've met him once, and I'm a university lecturer. I'm used to dealing with some of my colleagues. I'm street smart rather than smart. Some of my colleagues are super smart. You look at what they produce in terms of research across a myriad of subjects. And I thought I was used to dealing with smart people. And then I met Tony Bloom. And even in just the 5 minutes I was chatting to him, I realised that he's operating on a different strategic plane to any person I've met. He is the cleverest person I've met in my life.
Yeah, so I mean, apart from the people that are on Twitter asking for a Qatari billionaire to buy the club so that you can buy Mbappe or whatever, everyone's pretty much happy with the direction. But a general problem in the overall side of the game, which obviously you've talked extensively about, is the price for the fan of going to a game, tickets, merchandise, food, and all that stuff. How has Tony navigated that? Because obviously, this stuff doesn't come free. No one expects that it should. But from what you can see compared to other fan bases, would you say the Brighton fans are they being looked after? Are they sort of pleased overall with how that all pans out financially?
Yes, yeah, cool. As a fan, ideally, you want everything for free. But if we take the the European excursion last year, Brighton had 3 group games in the Europa League against pretty damn good opposition. AEK from Athens, Amsterdam, Ajax of Amsterdam, and Marseille. It was £75 for 3 tickets for that, whereas Aston Villa were charging £97 for a single game against Bayern Munich.
Can I just stop you there? I'm a Warsaw fan in League Two. I'm a season ticket holder, so it doesn't apply to me exactly. But if you're not a season ticket holder, you would pay more to go to 3 League Two home games for Warsaw than you would do for those 3 games you just said.
Yeah, and that's because Tony Bloom said those fans that have been supporting us in the Championship, those fans who have kept supporting us through their season tickets, following us home and away, this isn't an opportunity to fleece them. This is an opportunity to thank them for their support, and to say you can come along. And remember that includes free travel to and from the match. Yeah, you get that practically the whole of Sussex. So I pay. I was on the Spurs podcast last night. I pay £605, I think, for my season ticket. So I get 19 games. I get free travel to and from the match. I get a great view. The food isn't cheap, but the food is good. Yeah, we've got a local pie manufacturer. I don't drink alcohol myself, but we got the local brewery has beer on tap. For the away fans, there's always a guest ale from. If you're from Leeds, it will be a Leeds drink. If you're from Birmingham, it will be a Birmingham drink, and so on. So I think the club puts an awful lot of care into the match day experience. They just opened a 3,000 capacity fan zone in the last week, and they're doing sort of really innovative things. So much as it pains them to have experienced it, the Palace game last Saturday, you could go along to the fan zone and watch it on big screens. Cost you £6 and you got a free drink included in that. So I think Tony Bloom has been a brilliant owner, not only from a strategic point of view, but he's got the pricing pretty much spot on as well. No complaints for me. I've been watching Brighton for over 50 years, and it's I just pinch myself every time I walk up to the Annex. It still takes my breath away.
Well, moving aside from the finances now to talk about your fandom a little bit more, you mentioned there just how long you've been following the club. What have been the lowest lows that you've experienced?
I mean, the lowest lows was certainly the seasons in League Two when we didn't know whether we had a football club. The 96-97 season, I think for anybody that followed the Albion that particular year, it was our final season at the Goldstone Ground. There were owners who had changed the club's constitution so that if the stadium was sold and the club went out of business, they kept all of the profits. And fortunately, one of our fans, who's a guy called Paul Samra, he spotted this. He spotted this change of constitution, and the owners sort of backtracked on that. But that was without doubt for me the worst season. And just before Christmas, we were 13 points adrift at the bottom of the table. The stadium had been sold. We wouldn't have been able to get into what is now the National League because they said, well, you haven't got a stadium to play in, so therefore, so the club did face extinction. New manager came in, turned things round, but we were playing good at home, badly away. And I can still remember, we went to Chester, and it was about 6 or 7 games left of the season. We really needed a result. We saw the club chief executive in the car park before the match, and we chased him. Yeah, we chased him because we were going to do some damage because he was associated with the owners. And we chased. We managed to survive, but we only survived on goal difference. So that was as bad as it gets. Followed by 2 utterly forgettable years at playing at Gillingham, where again we only effectively saved our own existence due to the owners of Doncaster gutting their own club and finishing below us.
And you probably couldn't have ever dreamed that things would get to where they are now. Has there ever been a better time to be a Brighton fan than right now?
No. I mean, if you'd said to me 20, 30 years ago that you'd be playing in a state-of-the-art stadium, that you'd be averaging crowds of over 30,000, and that you'd be doing the double over Ajax of Amsterdam, I'd have been checking you for substance abuse. It just sounded completely bonkers. The exquisite football that Brighton play on occasions, the fact that Brighton are signing players for 30 and 40 million pounds. And I know the club's been at pains to say these are one-off deals. We're going back to the more modest pool you normally associate the Albion with. It's been amazing, and now I think we've beaten Manchester United 6 times out of the last 7. We did the double over Chelsea the other season. We've got 4 points off Manchester City. I appreciate it's not a great Manchester City. We now go into matches not with expectation, but previously there was expectation of, against the Big Six, anything better than a 2-0 defeat. We would normally say that from a goal difference point of view, I'll take that at the start of the match. Whereas now you say, well, we feel that we can go toe to toe against every opponent, and the better team, the more expensive team, the more expensive squad will normally win on the day. But we're certainly in with a fighting chance. And some of the football that they play, I don't know whether you saw Matoma's goal against Chelsea, was just off the scale.
It is. It regularly is as a neutral. But is there a danger of the club and Tony becoming sort of, how would you put this, that the success becoming a problem in itself? I know that you say most of the fans have got their feet on the ground, but there could be, I see, for example, if next year you're 15th, 16th, is there going to be uproar, that this is not us? We should be 7th, that can happen, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you look at sort of case studies, I think Charlton Athletic and Stoke City are 2 perfect case studies of clubs that got to the Premier League, that established themselves in the Premier League, and then they were finishing 8th or 9th on a regular basis. And then after a couple of years of that, the fans were saying, we need to go to the next level. And therefore they changed things around, either a change of style or a change of coach. And they both ended up getting relegated on the back of that. Stoke have now been in the Championship for 6 or 7 years. Charlton have not been back to the Premier League for a long period of time, and they've been sort of recycling themselves between the Championship and League One. So be careful what you wish for in football. I think with the success of English clubs, actually aiming for 8th at the start of the season and the probable Europa Conference position that would bring should be the ambition of the club. When Tony Bloom said 4 years ago, I think it was, that the aim of Brighton and Hove Albion is to be a regular top 10 club, we all looked at each other and went, blimey, Tony, that's a bit ambitious. But then, as I said earlier, Tony Bloom's the smartest guy I've met in my life. Who was right? 9th, 6th, 11th, currently 8th. Tony Bloom was right as always.
Well, so far so good. How are your feelings and how is your optimism for the rest of this season?
Well, 3 defeats in a row has sort of taken away the excitement. We felt at one stage there's an outside chance of getting 5th and into the Champions League. Football can change very, very quickly. So there's a few mutterings amongst some of my friends. I'm still very positive. I think there's 7 games to go. If we win 4 and draw a couple of them, there's no reason why we can't certainly stay at least 8th and ideally get as far as 6th. and the rewards that brings. So a huge amount to play for. We've got some tough opponents. We've still got to play Newcastle at home, West Ham at home, Liverpool at home. We've got to go to Spurs and so on. We've got to go to Brentford. But I'm firmly of the belief if you don't deserve anything better unless you can beat the sides around you. So we're not when injuries haven't helped things. But I'm normally a very positive person. I'm just as positive looking forward to the match against Leicester at the weekend. I think if we lose to Leicester at home, there will be mutterings, but then football fans have become far more precious than they used to be. The fact that we now expect to beat a side who less than 10 years ago won the Premier League is indicative of how things have changed in football.
Kieran, thanks so much for speaking to us today, and all the best for the rest of the season. Are you free now, or have you got any more wall-to-wall interviews?
I'm going to a law panel in London. I've got to go to ITV Studios for 4:00. I'm recording with Radio Stoke in about half an hour. And what people don't realise, I have a day job.
Well, I feel sorry for your boss. That he has to try and get a little bit of time with you where he can.
Well, I feel even more sorry for my wife.
Thank you, Kieran. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Craig.
Thanks for listening to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. It was such a pleasure speaking to Kieran, and we can't wait to bring you more chats with fans from across the footballing landscape, from ex-pros to bloggers, YouTubers and much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. If you really liked it, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. That will help us out so much. Thanks again, and catch you next time on the Sporticos Football Stories podcast.